Golden Black Radio is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. At Academy Sports and Outdoors, we carry all the gear you need from the top brands, all at prices you'll love. And now shopping at the Academy is more convenient than ever. We offer free assembly on in-store purchases of most bikes and grills, plus free and easy curbside pickup on academy.com orders. Want to save even more every day? Open and use an Academy Sports and Outdoors credit card to get 5% off future purchases when you're approved. Save time and money at Academy Sports and Outdoors and have fun out there. Happy Friday. Welcome into another edition of Golden Black Radio presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. I'm your host, Derek Schultz. After a mostly uneventful, I guess in a good way, 2-0 start to the season, the real tests begin now for Purdue football when one of the biggest brand programs in the entire sport, Southern Cal, makes the cross-country trip from L.A. to West Lafayette. We're going to talk Trojans and where Purdue sits after their first undefeated start under a first-year head coach, 2-0 head start since whatever that was, 1906. That predates even Tom. In fact, Tom's going to join us coming up a little bit later on today. Dub Jellison's going to join us coming up in just a few minutes. But first, Golden Black Radio is brought to you by Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler Up, East End Grill, and Ripple & Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. The Whitaker Inn, this Midwestern oasis is perfect for a relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. And the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research. The Purdue Institute for Cancer Research has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Purdue brings together world-class Boilermaker scientists from across the university, conducting cutting-edge research that uncovers new ways to prevent, diagnose, and treat cancer. With your support, cancer research saves lives. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. Let's bring on our football knowers and writers, goldenblack.com. Tom Dienhart, Dub Jellison, join us here as they always do on Golden Black Radio, Friday edition of the show. Happy Friday, guys. USC, Notre Dame, Illinois. Tom, I don't know if this is where the fun begins. I don't know if I would put it that way for Purdue, but I think I do speak for a lot of folks when I say I'm really interested to see what these Boilermakers look like against this slate of competition here starting tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, I call it looking under the hood of the 2025 Boilermakers. Let's really see what they got now, right? The preliminaries, so to speak, are over. The tune-ups are over. Now the real test commences, right? The mighty Trojans, who haven't been so mighty for the last 5 or 10 years, but they're still the Trojans. They're still going to be a good bellwether, a measuring stick, if you will, to see where Purdue's really at here, guys. I mean, about a 20-point underdog, the Boilermakers. Could Purdue really pull this off? Yeah, but still, I'm just really intrigued. I'm excited, number one, to have the Trojans come to West Lafayette, one of those logo schools, so to speak. And again, number two, you get to see what Purdue's really got in every phase of the game, guys. It's going to be fascinating to see also any new wrinkles that we may see introduced by the staff that we haven't seen the first 2 weeks.
Dub, I probably should have gone back and looked, but I just decided to go off the top of my gigantic head here. It's been a while since Purdue didn't have a Power 4 level opponent in the first 2 weeks of the season. You know, you go back to the Brom years with Louisville, remember in game 1 at Lucas-Oil Stadium, or they had to play Penn State that one year as a week 1 game in a Big Ten opener. They had Oregon State one year as an opener, or even last year. Yeah, they started with ISU, but then boom, right off the bat, Notre Dame in week 2. Is there advantage to be had for Purdue to actually have not just one or zero, but 2 games under their belt to work out some of the kinks before ramping things up here for an opponent of USC's caliber?
Oh, without a doubt. I think, especially when you look at this team and how it was constructed, primarily out of the transfer portal, I think, you got one full-time starter coming back at Devin Mockabee. The rest of the guys, some of the guys were here last year or at Purdue last year, or kind of been thrust into starting roles. But, it's such a new-look team. I think they needed those 2 games to really find out who they were. I don't know that they actually know who they are yet. I think we're going to find that out here in this upcoming stretch, like you talked about off the top. But I think having an opportunity to just build confidence and for Ryan Brown to learn his receivers, for the guys on the defensive side to learn about each other in a game setting. I think there's only so much you can learn in practice and in scrimmages. So I think, it's just kind of how it worked out for Barry Odom, having those two opponents right off the bat. So that's big for them, and I think you've seen that with Indiana last year. They were able to build confidence, and yeah, they were a really good team, but they were able to build that confidence against 3 teams that had no business playing against them. And then they went on and obviously did great things last year. I'm not saying Purdue's going to do the same thing, but I think there's an added benefit, especially when you're restarting a program to schedule those types of games.
Tom, the last time this program was successful, you go back to the Jeff Brom era. And I know it was frustrating for some fans because there were occasional no-shows, right? Like a noon game against Rutgers in October, you didn't know what Purdue was going to show up. But for games like this, for the most part, you knew. Like they were going to play up to competition like this. From what you've seen, and I know that we're talking about a 2-game sample here in just a couple of weeks of summer camp, does Purdue have the horses to play up to USC and compete, not only with the Trojans coming up on Saturday, but for the rest of the upper half, let's say, Big Ten teams on their schedule this year?
I guess I'm still inclined not to think they've got the horses, Derek. I don't want to be too wowed by what we've seen the first 2 weeks, positively or negatively. I don't think you ever can. I think they've upgraded the talent to a degree, but more importantly, I think they're better coached. Just a better culture overall, more accountability, a more disciplined program, and then that's going to carry them a long way, even if maybe they aren't as talented as they were last year, which some people may argue. But man, can they line up with a team like USC, those athletes they've got? Can they line up with Michigan's, the Ohio States? I don't know if they're ready for that yet. At this point, I hate to say it, but it kind of takes me back to the first Rocky. If they can just go the distance and not get knocked out, and from a football analogy, that's cover the spread, right? Don't get embarrassed. I think it's a win for Purdue. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they're not at the stage now where they can stand shoulder to shoulder and trade punches with a program like USC.
And Dub, should Purdue take that? Some fans, and I'm sure the folks on a couple of people on Knucklehead Central will be like, what? That's a loser mentality. You can't accept anything but winning is failure. But if it's 41-24, and let's say USC scores a late touchdown in the fourth quarter to make it 41-24 and finally kind of put it away, even if it feels like a game that Purdue is never going to realistically win. Are you cool with that? With where this program is right now, should that be an acceptable level performance? And I'm just throwing a score out there, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Something Tom and I talked about earlier this week. I do think it matters how Purdue loses. If they do in fact lose on Saturday, I don't think you can have another 56-0 type performance like we saw last year out of this team. But if they're neck and neck heading into the fourth, and USC just flexes their muscles and runs away with it in the final 15 minutes, you kind of got to tip your hat and say, yeah, that's kind of what we expected. It's USC. If Purdue gets run out of the building, then there's going to be a lot of the same questions that were there last year. And I don't think Barry Odom is. If they lose, I don't think Barry Odom's going to find any silver linings in a loss. I just don't think that's the type of person or coach he is. But from a fan's perspective, I think if you go into, especially this stretch right now with USC, Notre Dame, and Illinois, I think if you go into it with reasonable expectations, if they were to lose in that fashion, I don't think it would be a disappointment.
Yeah, I think it's always important to be realistic about expectations, and whether that's a loser mentality or not, wishing for things that aren't feasible is not going to do anybody any good either. So I think most Purdue fans are thinking to themselves, hey, if the crowd can get into this game, have some things to cheer for, if they could push USC, be in it, maybe even give themselves a chance to win. Certainly if they give themselves a chance to win, that would be something that they would take. Tom, we talked about a lot of the good signs so far, notably the fact that Purdue has avoided a lot of mistakes. We're still not seeing Purdue turn anybody over. Yeah. They had the fewest takeaways in the entire country last year. They're sitting on a donut this year through the first 2 games. 5 total turnovers forced in their last 14 games. That almost feels like a made-up stat. I don't even know how – you would think that somebody would accidentally fumble the ball to you a little bit more than that over a 14-game span.
Yeah, tip pass gets intercepted.
Sure.
A botched handoff. Like you said, some player just drops the ball. But, it hasn't happened. So you can create turnovers, obviously. We know that. And that's where Mike Shear is going to have to dial up some blitzes, I think. Try to force those mistakes, guys. They can't let Jaden Maeva work back there unfettered in the pocket, because if he's unfettered back there sipping his iced tea, surveying the field, picking out receivers, it's going to be game over. So without a doubt, I'll be eager to see the type of defensive game plan they come up with. We know that he likes to blitz. We know that he likes to bring guys from different angles, different spots on the field, cornerback, safeties, linebackers, you name it. I think he's a smart guy, and Barry Odom's a defensive guy too. So you know they're going to cook up some good stuff here. But yeah, back to your point about the game too, guys. Make USC sweat. Try to make USC sweat. Get this thing into halftime where it's maybe a 1-score game or a 2-score game. That type of stuff's going to go a long way. The quality of that loss. And I think, guys, the very first Jeff Brom game against Louisville in Indianapolis in the Dome, right? Boy, that was a ball game. Lamar Jackson's the quarterback, and boy, Purdue pushed them to the wall. Great game. Purdue lost, but it felt like a win. I mean, if Purdue can come close to replicating something like that Saturday in a losing fashion, hey, I think most people will leave Ross-Ade pretty happy.
I get all my Anthrops mixed up. That was Jackson, right? That had the big game against Louisville. Okay, great.
You pass. You get your boiler people.
I have trouble. The years run together for me, and the Anthrops run together for me, trying to remember who is who. Last thing here, Tom, I know you still have your ear to the ground as far as what's being said nationally. On paper, kind of as you mentioned, there's no reason why USC should lose this game, right? It's a talent mismatch, but games aren't played that way. And there's certainly a lot of pressure for their investment in Lincoln Riley to pay off here now. And these cross-country trips we've seen for these West Coast teams have been wonky, especially for SC. They have not won a game in the Eastern or Central time zones. Meanwhile, I think Barry Odom's bunch is playing pressure-free in a lot of ways. So can those elements of this factor in and play into Purdue's favor if there is a tight game and if Purdue does put themselves in a position in the third and fourth quarter where the USC sideline's looking around and being like, damn, this game's close? Uh-oh.
Wonky. I like it, Derek Schultz. I like it. There's no doubt, you mentioned that history of coming east this last year, of course, losing at Maryland, they lose at Michigan, they lose at Minnesota. The only former Pac-12 school last year that had a winning record coming east was Oregon. Of course, we know how good the Ducks were. So there's that. I saw where Riley's changed their travel plans, how they're going to do things, when they're going to eat, just trying to change things up, change up their routine, and maybe change their mojo when they're making those trips. And yeah, man, I tell you what, Derek and Dub, if they can punch USC in the nose early, create some doubt, let USC know that they're in for a fight. Like you said, Derek, have the guys on the USC sideline starting to look at each other going, wow, this could be a long afternoon here. We thought we were going to run over these guys. All the better, try to get them on their heels early, see how they deal with adversity. And if Purdue can get a lead, we all know that's a great advantage to play with.
Dub, I lied. I did have one more for you. As we mentioned, this is a big-time opponent here with USC coming in. It's not a night game, but a 3:30 kick and a pedigree program that's coming to Ross-Ade. What's the visit schedule, and what are some of the recruits that they've got that they have coming and that you have your eye on as far as the ones that this staff has been targeting?
Yeah, this is a big one. I think it's bigger than just pound for pound. The guys that'll be on campus on Saturday are the best of the season so far. I know we're only 3 games in, but it's a big one, and it kind of coincides with a big game. I think, the top guy, Cameron McGee, out of Chicago, he's a 2028 kid, but he's already on the cusp of being a 5-star, top 10 nationally. He's a defensive end, so he's the number one guy. Obviously, he's a few years away, so Purdue's kind of just setting the foundation there. I think the guy that I have my eye on most is Brandon Sharp. He's a guy that I loved his film going back to last year. I thought he was one of the best receivers in the state. He's out of Brownsburg, and that's really come to fruition. He was among the most productive guys last year in the entire state, and he's doing that and then some for a nationally ranked Brownsburg team. So I'm going to get out and see him at some point this season, but he's a big guy. Mason Oglesby, a tight end slash linebacker from New Pal. He's a guy that they're really high on. Chris Flores is coming in from California, 2027 wide receiver. Mason Halliman, a 3-star offensive lineman from Illinois. So it's a big group. I'm going to miss some guys if I keep going down the list, but they have an opportunity to impress some of these recruits on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Follow along, Tom and Dub, all season long for the absolute best Purdue football and recruiting coverage on the interwebs, and check them out on the post-game show as well to follow USC and Purdue, a 3:30 kick at Ross-Ade Stadium. At Tom Dienart1 and at Dub Jellison on X, and right here, of course, on goldenblack.com. Fellas, we'll tag you back in for the roundtable. Thanks so much.
Thank you, buddy.
That's good. Thanks, guys.
That's Tom and Dub. This portion of Golden Black Radio brought to you by East End Grill and Ripple and Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. And the Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn. Tom had the chance to talk to Pete Abergast, the longtime voice of the USC Trojans. He's been there, Rodney Pete era, I want to say several decades now. He joined Tom early this week for a conversation about Saturday's game between the Boilers and Trojans, and here's that conversation.
All right, very pleased to be joined by Pete Arbogast, the voice of USC football. Of course, the men of Troy are coming to West Lafayette for Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff. Pete's going to drop some USC knowledge on us. Pete, let's jump right in. What can our viewers expect from this Trojan offense on Saturday?
Well, they've been pretty good, but it's hard to tell because the two teams they played aren't very good at all. Missouri State playing their first ever FBS game, and Georgia Southern, they're okay, but that's all you can say about them pretty much. So SC's really dominated their first two games and only had their starters play about half the game. It's really hard to tell. Now Purdue will be a better opponent, and then our next opponents after that, Michigan State and Illinois, will be better than that, maybe. So we're expecting a better game. It's our first road game. We've stunk it up on the road in the Big Ten last year in our first go-round, so we've learned some lessons from that. A lot of good players on this offensive side. We're still not sure about how good the offensive line is. Mm-hmm. We'll find out more about that, but they've been opening big holes for the running backs, and Whammon Jordan and Eli Sanders have been very good. Jaden Mayava, one of the passing leaders in the country, has 700 yards and 6 touchdowns in like 5 quarters of football so far. The receivers, Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane, are very, very good, maybe one of the best tandems in the country. And so, if the offensive line can hold up, they should score a lot of points.
Pete, what can Purdue fans expect from that SC defense?
Well, they're better than they were, which isn't saying much. That's a kind of low bar over the last few years, but they look like they've got bigger, sturdier bodies up front and a lot of guys that they can rotate around up front as well. Linebackers are good. The secondary has been burned a couple of times. That's a bit of a concern for fans. They look better. I guess that's what we could say. They look better than they have in the last couple of years, and they have to look better because they couldn't look much worse.
Pete, how do you see this game unfolding on Saturday?
I would suspect that SC would win the game. They're favored by a lot. They look like they have much more team speed and maybe better skill players. It all comes down really to whether or not Purdue can get any pressure on the quarterback and stop the SC running game. And that means the SC offensive line has to hold up. I think they will well enough to win this football game. And probably be close to the point. But you know what? We went to Maryland last year, and that was a bad Maryland team, and we lost. We went to Minnesota, and we lost. So anything can happen in this league, as we can see. And it's the opener. Everybody's undefeated in conference play, so it's gonna be fun to get started.
Yeah, for Purdue, a lot to be revealed too, Pete. SC's, like you said, about a 19, 20, 22-point favorite or so. This would be the Trojans' first trip to West Lafayette since 1976. John Robinson, first-year coach. Of course, the star running back was Ricky Bell that year. So these teams have some history to them. It's going to be fun to see them back on the field together, Pete. I look forward to meeting you Saturday. I appreciate you coming by and giving us some knowledge on USC.
I'm old enough to be – I was 12 years old. I went to the Rose Bowl in '67, and I sat about 5 rows away from where George Cadavallos intercepted the pass in the end zone. It ruined my day, but not my life, apparently. A great football game with some great players in it then too. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. It should be fun.
Thank you, Pete. See you soon, buddy.
All right.
Thanks to Pete Abergast for joining us. And 1967 for that Rose Bowl, and the USC Purdue history, actually more recent than that, which we'll get into with Alan Carpet coming up here in just a little bit. But while we've had some absolutely pristine and gorgeous fall weather at Ross-Ade Stadium for the first 2 weeks of the season, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Saturday is going to feel like more like summer in LA than fall in central Indiana. Here's Chad Evans with your game day forecast.
For the USC matchup on Saturday, with the Boilers, temperatures hot, around 90 degrees, but low humidity with a southwest wind, and then temperatures should fall to around 80 degrees by halftime, and then should be in the mid-70s by the end of the game. So sunscreen and certainly more in the way of shorts weather for this weekend's game. Boiler up.
Going to be a hot one out there, so plan accordingly coming up here on Saturday. Thanks to our great sponsors, Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler up for making Golden Black Radio possible. And let's bring on Alan Karpik, who raises the temperature in any room that he walks into as well. He is the publisher of goldenblack.com. And Alan, full disclosure here, some people know my alma mater, and I'm always kind of hesitant to bring this factoid about my, Derek Schultz's life up. My parents were born and raised in South Bend, and I grew up around a lot of Notre Dame people as well, who really disliked, I should say, USC.
Yeah,
but
they do.
I'll be honest with you. I've always loved the uniforms. I love the helmets. I love the Coliseum. Some of their great players, more recently Reggie Bush, but Keyshawn Johnson back in that era, was a great player as well. And Junior Seau. The only thing I don't like is the band playing after the dun 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 dun. It feels like it happens after every down when the band's there. But outside of that, I've always kind of secretly sort of, I don't even know what the word is, maybe like admired USC from afar, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. College sports crush, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
My sister, who is a Purdue grad and has a child that went to the University of Spoiled Children, as some people call it, USC. He's a fine attorney in the San Diego area. But my point is, the band, she pointed out on our Wednesday night, that the USC band in some form has made it to 477 straight road games. So there's going to be a contingent there, if she's telling me the truth and not just pulling my leg. But I love the chant or that thing. Even when Purdue played there in 98, I don't know why. I think it goes back to the days of Keith Jackson and maybe even Chris Schenkel, and watching those games with O.J. Simpson and Anthony Davis and all those great moments and those great tailbacks at USC. And you're right, those uniforms are fantastic. I'm old enough, Derek, to have been to the game in 1976 when they came to West Lafayette. And just to see those uniforms there will be a big deal. We'll see if it's a good thing to watch and see after the first quarter, but it's a big deal to have them there, and that tradition there is pretty hard to beat.
Interestingly, there's a lot of shared history between these two current teams. Barry Odom's UNLV ties to Jaden Maeva, and OC John Henson came here from USC, right? Was running things as the offensive line coach and coordinator there, but also some historical ones as well. I mentioned the Rose Bowl, but you don't have to go all the way back to 1967 to find some matchups between these two teams.
Well, even the Rose Bowl did, because John McKay, the head coach at USC, and of course a Hall of Fame level college coach, and coached the Tampa Bay Bucks to a couple winless season, I think he was, but he also turned them around. Played football at Purdue. Yeah. So back in the 40s, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago when Purdue had Ball State's head coach obviously had his undergrad done at Purdue, but there is some interesting tradition. Of course, that 67 Rose Bowl, and I'd like to have a voice like USC's play-by-play guy, but it was George Katavalis that had the interception that sealed the win for Purdue in that 14-13 game. But you got to remember, that USC team was not a great one. USC got beat by Notre Dame 51-0 in the Coliseum in its last regular season game. Purdue was a pretty heavy favorite in that Rose Bowl and had to kind of work their way to a 14-13 win. But I don't think a lot of people remember that, and it doesn't really matter. Purdue got the job done, but played a couple times in the 70s, 1975 in the Coliseum, when the game was scoreless at halftime. USC wins 19-6. Then the following year, of course, Ricky Bell, Vince Evans, if you're a Chicago Bears fan, you know who Vince Evans was. They come in and beat Purdue relatively soundly, 31-13 in Ross-Ade before that game in 1998 in the Heat Bowl in the Coliseum.
Yeah, 100 degrees, right? That's crazy. Thankfully, it's not going to be that hot coming up tomorrow afternoon. But speaking of Rose Bowls, the 2000 Boilers team will be there. And I wanted to save this question. I was like, this is an Alan Carpet question. I was talking with a buddy of mine, Purdue grad and a Colts fan, and he's always been adamant that Tiller, and I think part of this is biased because he wasn't on campus for 2000, but he was for the 2003 team. He's always been adamant that the 03 team was Tiller's best team, but it just didn't have the luck that, the 2000 team had a lot of close games, right? The ball bounced their way a lot of times. Kind of like how Colts fans sometimes say the 05 team was actually better than the 06 team that won the Super Bowl. Does he have a legit gripe? I want you to be kind of the judge, jury, executioner here for that.
I think arguably yes, but you're never going to get bigger at Purdue than Drew Brees. So, and that team had that in 2000. You got to remember, Purdue was a 2-loss Big Ten team and made it to the Rose Bowl. That was hard to do back in those days. Purdue had a tied with Northwestern and Michigan, I believe, that year, and had a couple breaks at the right time. Iowa beat not a very good Kirk Ferentz team, beats Northwestern at the right time, delivers Purdue after Purdue lost to Michigan State down the stretch. You got to remember, Purdue lost to the two worst teams in the Big Ten that year in its 2 losses, Penn State, Michigan State. So, yeah, I take the defense in 03, but I still would never bet against Drew Brees. And if you're a Purdue fan, he found a way to win. He found a way to make up for his 4 interceptions, though he threw for 455 yards against Ohio State to get the job done, that 64-yard pass to Seth Morales. And one thing about those guys, they'll be having fun. By the time this airs on Friday, they're going to figure out all the fun they're going to have in here. Drew Brees will be in here. And that's a big deal for Purdue because you've only been to the Rose Bowl twice. This is a magical group of guys, some great personalities, led by its head coach and Joe Tiller. But you talk about Drew Brees, but you got the Tim Stratton story and the lost helmet against Michigan. You have Aiken Adele. You've got Matt Mitrione, who was a ultimate fighter. Yeah. All those kind of guys, some great personalities, some really good players, and some really good, a lot of guys that were pretty good pros out of that group that were redshirt freshmen and freshmen too. With talk about Sean Phillips, Stuart Schweigert, Craig Terrell. On down the line, there were several, and it was a group with some pop. And they got the job done. And there aren't many teams. Only 2 have been to the Rose Bowl from Purdue. It's taken 2 Hall of Fame level quarterbacks in Bob Greasy and Drew Brees to get there. And that's what makes it special. And I think Purdue fans realize, even though it's hard to believe, Derek, it's been 25 years. There'll be some. It's kind of an emotional thing when those guys come back because they are beloved. And Joe Tiller's legend after his too early passing. Continues to grow about what he did, and it holds up because he did deliver Purdue to a pretty high level in the Big Ten, especially in his first 5 or 6 years, up to that 2003 year especially.
Yeah, and those guys have been great representatives of Purdue, not just football players, but just Purdue graduates, right? With the success, like look at Seth Morales and his professional career, and like a lot of these other guys have gone on to do great things outside of football. As they've kind of left football over the years. So I think that kind of adds to the beloved nature of this team. Alan, it's going to have all of our historical perspectives right here on Gold and Black Radio all season long on these Friday editions of the show. And we appreciate the history lesson. And I'll report back to my buddy that you said Brees is the tiebreaker. I agree with you. Brees is the ultimate tiebreaker.
Love the 03 team, but they lost to Bowling Green and that might have changed some things, but I'm betting on number 15, though Kyle Orton was really good too. But this is I'm going to hedge my bets with those guys. But Derek, yeah, it's always fun to do this. Always fun to look back.
And don't forget, Alan, post-game show as well. USC Purdue following the 3:30 kick when that game concludes a couple minutes after right here on Gold and Black Radio.
We'll try to shed some wisdom. That can be a challenge, but we like to do that.
We'll come back with Brian Newbert and the roundtable coming up in segment 4 right after this. As you all know by now, Gold and Black Radio has also teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. When you join BetMGM, you get access to a variety of parlay selection features like same-game parlays, live betting options, and more. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet. Offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code ON3 when you sign up. Make this college football season one for the history books. Make it legendary. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 and over only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that can expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. Want to also go ahead and thank our great sponsor, the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, for making Golden Black Radio possible. The Purdue Institute for Cancer Research is a history of innovation and one goal for the future. Defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. I got a lot of angry emails last week. I don't have access to the Golden Black general email inbox, but a lot of people were hitting me up and they were saying, hey, what's the deal? I need Brian Newbert. Why was Brian Newbert not on the show last week? That's my expectation. He wasn't there. I'm upset. So I calmed those folks down. We brought Brian back this week, the columnist for goldenblack.com. He was traveling. He's a very busy man, hitting the road, recruiting, all of that. It never stops with basketball. I just wanted to let you know that your legions of fans were truly upset with me. They thought that I had something to do with your absence on the show last week, and I just kind of calmly explained what was going on.
Anything I can do to draw people's ire against you, I'm happy to do, Derek. In all honesty, I serve no purpose here, but if people look forward to hearing from me, then great. I appreciate it.
You serve a huge purpose here because I know you're still writing, right, about, obviously it's a lot of basketball, but also about the football team and boiling over and sharing your thoughts. I did find this interesting. You're approaching this as sort of an anything is possible type game. I mean, I guess that could be both good and bad for Purdue, no?
Well, I think that, we're still at a point in the season here where, sorry, I've got a mint in my mouth. We're still at a point in the season here where nobody really knows anything about anybody. So I think that looking at USC as a 3-touchdown favorite is, understandable when you look at the history of the two brands, when you just look at it very superficially. But when you look closer at Purdue, and when you look at USC's body of work leaving the western portion of the continent to play Big Ten football games, it's possible Purdue surprises you here. Very possible that they just kind of sucker punch USC. The home environment at Purdue is going to be very, very difficult to play in, I'd imagine, on Saturday. That matters. I don't think USC is probably all that accustomed to playing in environments like this. They don't do it when they go to UCLA. Notre Dame obviously is a big deal, but I think Big Ten travel, Big Ten home environments are going to be an adjustment for a team that is or a program that is accustomed to playing in a relatively laid back portion of the country from a sports perspective. That said, these rosters turn over every single year. So it's not like all these guys at USC have been part of the problem. The same way all these guys at Purdue right now have not been part of the problem that enveloped the program last year. So I just think that USC's got a lot of stuff working against it here. Purdue might be set up for one of those magical home field, in this case, sorts of afternoons. And what's to say Purdue's not, better than what people think they are? I don't think we know that yet. I don't think we know that about USC either. I do know USC last year was 7-6, and Lincoln Riley is sitting in a frying pan. And if things go bad for them, who knows how they respond? Because USC has long been sort of a white collar program, so to speak, and I'd imagine that hasn't changed all that much as the landscape in college football has changed. But I just don't see any reason to believe that this USC team, who has played even more nobody quotient with their first two opponents than Purdue has with its first two opponents, is necessarily conditioned to come on the road to play in what will be a different environment against a relatively unknown opponent who does have some insider trading knowledge about how your program works. Josh Henson obviously was on staff there last year. He's Purdue's offensive play caller. So who knows? Every little thing matters. And there's a lot of things sort of working in Purdue's favor here and some things working against USC here. That said, USC is always going to get the benefit of the doubt in a game against Purdue because USC historically has unbelievable players.
So far this season, Purdue has committed just 1 turnover and 5 total penalties. Small sample size, but I'd say they're doing pretty well when it comes to your ask about, hey, just play smart, disciplined football, which is something that we haven't seen Purdue do on a consistent basis in a long time. I don't think I'm stepping out on a limb here. That is going to have to continue for them to have any prayer to win this game on Saturday, yes?
Every single game the rest of the way, yes. Purdue has to not beat itself. That's goes without saying. That is the non-negotiable. That is the baseline for every game from here on out, whether it's the best teams in the Big Ten, whether it's the middle of the Big Ten, whether it's whatever teams might find themselves under you in the pecking order in the Big Ten, whoever that team could be, if there are any. Purdue just has to give itself a chance and has to take care of the football. It has to avoid penalties. It has to tackle well. It has to not commit critical errors at every turn that change games. Not every turn, but that turn games. I think the tackling so far has been good. I don't know if the coaches would agree with that, but what you haven't seen is somebody miss a tackle and it leads to like a 60-yard touchdown that completely changes a game. You have seen missed tackles, and then you've seen 5 players behind it come clean it up, which is the way you want to miss tackles. You've seen missed sacks that get cleaned up. If that sack ends up with a 20-yard scramble for a first down on 3rd and 15, then that's a bad play. But if you miss the sack, but you blow their play up and nothing becomes of it, that's not a negative play. I think that Purdue has done a pretty good job avoiding penalties. The back-to-back personal fouls are in the second half against Southern Illinois were weird and just out of character from what we've seen through 2 games of football here. But I think one of the other penalties was one of those weird, what's the penalty? Provocative signaling or something. I can't remember what the word is. But you can't clap before snaps now. Purdue's got to get that corrected. They did it again against Southern Illinois. Didn't get called for it. They did get called for against Ball State, but they've got to clean some of that stuff up. The offensive line has been clean from a penalty perspective. Got to stay that way. I just think Purdue's given itself a chance in games where it hasn't necessarily needed, that baseline of being solid because it's so much better than its opponents. Now that changes, it just has to not beat itself. It has to make the opponent earn everything it gets. And that's really the biggest test, in my opinion, of how things are being run, how things are buttoned up, how detail-oriented this program's going to be under Barry Odom. Early returns are good, but I still think the jury has to be considered out, considering the level of competition played through these first 2 games and the margin for error Purdue was able to play with.
Disconcerting signals, right? Is that what it
was?
It's a penalty. I think that's what it is. Provocative. I think it's
provocative better.
I like that better too. I think that's still allowed. I think the fans are still allowed to give provocative signals sometimes, but just not on the field.
All different types.
Last one here, and this is a basketball question, but I know a lot of, obviously the fans that are Purdue football fans, basketball fans too, they're focused on this. We asked Dub about some of the football recruits in town. Basketball's got a big one. Cam Williams coming to town as well. What can you tell us about this weekend? And, just this recruitment is a little bit unique for Purdue, right? This is a sandbox that normally they don't necessarily play in, and maybe as an offshoot of this run that they've put together over the last 7, 8, 9 years.
Yeah, Purdue's done a really good job recruiting him. I think he's genuinely interested. I think he was interested before he even had an offer, which I think doesn't just speak volumes, but screams volumes about Purdue's national profile now, is that when kids are looking forward to Purdue recruiting them before Purdue even recruits them, that's a pretty good deal. And that's, something that hasn't always necessarily been the case at Purdue. They've always had to try to punch above their weight class. I think they are the weight class now. I think they're among the heavyweights. I'm not saying they're going to win all the belts, but they are among the heavyweights. They get an audience with those kids. They can compete with those kids in very, very treacherous recruiting waters, as we say. I think Cam Williams is a guy who's going to be a lottery pick potentially sooner rather than later. And, Purdue would afford him the opportunity to, come in and be their power forward right away, be their starter. You probably wouldn't then go and get a guy in the portal, which I think you would do otherwise. But you would give him the opportunity to come in and get big minutes right away. Now, it's not normally Matt Painter's way to say, look, you come in here, you're our starter. You're playing 30 minutes a game. We're playing through you. We're going to develop you on the job. That's not always been his way of doing things. But, sometimes that stuff goes unsaid, and it's just kind of understood. And it's also not unreasonable to suggest Painter could break from some of his normal practices in a situation like this, where you have a kid this highly recruited, this highly regarded, this capable. I do think his body, having seen him play a number of times, his body is not necessarily where it will be one day. Maybe not optimal for Big Ten basketball from day one. So expecting him to come in right away and be like Caleb Swanigan or be like, somebody like that might be a little bit unreasonable. But he is mega talented, tall, long, athletic. Duke wants him. Arizona wants him. Everybody wants him. He's going to be a lottery pick sooner rather than later based on a lot of projections. So you can always find a use for a guy like that. If Purdue can get him, it is cause for a parade. I think it would be difficult to call Purdue the likely choice here. I think Duke and Arizona are going to be, the two schools that are going to bring are going to come heaviest here. I think they've recruited him very aggressively. There's going to be a lot of money involved. I don't know how Purdue's going to handle that part of it. I don't know how important that is to the kid. I know I've spoken to him. He's a smart kid. He seems to get it. He seems like a Purdue fit. He's really a try-hard sort of guy for as talented he is. I know he likes Luke Ertl. He appreciates Luke Ertl. He respects Luke Ertl, having been around him on the Adidas circle a little bit and circuit a little bit. And if he has enough basketball sense to him to look at Luke Ertl and say, hey, I want to play with a guy like that, chances are his basketball values would align pretty well with Purdue's. But easier said than done getting this guy. But the fact he's visiting says a lot about the job Purdue's done on him and Purdue's national profile on a player like this.
Well, we'll have our eyes on that for sure. You can check out all of Brian's work as well at goldenblack.com, recruiting and such, as we start to ramp up for basketball. It's a couple of weeks away. Brian, we'll bring you back for the roundtable here in just a few moments. Thanks.
Yep.
It's our pal Brian Newbert. This portion of the show brought to you by, what else? goldenblack.com. Analysis, report, shows like this one. Knucklehead Central. You can get all of it at goldenblack.com. Subscribe today for the absolute best Boilermakers sports coverage when it comes to men's basketball and football, with Dub, with Tom, with Brian, with, everybody, Alan, Carm, me, you get kind of the ancillary characters as well that are involved with goldenblack.com just by being a subscriber to the website. We really appreciate all of the support. Let's bring the whole gang back together for our roundtable to round us out on this Friday edition of Golden Black Radio. And we have a group chat, just to let everybody know on here, Golden Black Radio group chat, because we're all best friends in real life. I'm not sure how many people knew that. Even Dub immediately became a best friend. He's one of the guys. And so I made sure everybody was prepared for this question. I already talked about this with Alan. I think USC has the best uniform and helmet combo in all of college football. And I wanted everybody else to kind of give their pick as we go around the room here. Tom, you're directly to the right of me, so you go.
Man, there's so many to choose from. It's not great with tradition, but I love what Kansas has, man. They have these. They seem like they have 4 or 5 combinations. I love the giant Jayhawk. And they've got that like a baby blue top they wear now, kind of a UCLA blue. The word Kansas in about 5-inch letters across the top of it. They've got some neat looks that are a little comic booky, but they strike a chord with me.
I like the KU on the helmet when they do that. I kind of like that's kind of sharp, even though it's technically University of Kansas, right? I've never understood why they do KU for that. What about you, Dub?
Colorado does the same thing.
Yeah, they do. You're cooler and younger than all of us, Dub, so your answer is probably going to be the correct one.
I don't know. I might get heat for it. I love Florida State's helmets, and especially like the ones with the uniforms that they had, like when Jameis was there. Those gold tops and is that maroon?
Kind of maroon.
A garnet and gold,
red.
I think is what they technically
Yeah.
call it. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a maroon.
But yeah, when I was little, I was a big Jameis fan, so I got one of those jerseys. But that's always been my kind of favorite. I know they've kind of gone away from that style with the patterns on the shoulder pads. They've kind of gone more futuristic, I guess, or simple. But those were always my favorites.
Man, when I was little, you were watching Jameis. that cuts me very deeply, Dub.
I was 13.
Yeah,
I was
no
13.
doubt. No doubt.
So I wasn't that little.
What about you,
Last time I
Brian?
was there, I went to the Publix that he stole the crab legs from just to
Oh boy, yeah.
just to see it. I assume you're coming to me now.
Yes.
Penn State's all whites. Case closed.
Okay.
Clean look.
It's clean. It's a little boring for me, but I hear you. I always kind of I like the helmets too. I like the less is more. I'm glad nobody chose Oregon because it's too noisy to me. There's too much going on. I was going around.
Oregon is the 1989 Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, it's
a little too loud, a little too gaudy.
But everybody loves that style now. All that stuff's come way back. The 90s NBA stuff I see kind of everywhere with people that are Dub's age. I was going around the rest of the Big Ten schedule. There's not really much to choose from. I'm not going to ask people about Minnesota and Cal because I don't think anybody knows anything about it. I certainly don't. I also know nothing about Wisconsin, but I do know what I saw from Alabama's pitiful performance against FSU. Anybody think it's in Tuscaloosa? And, you talk about Lincoln Riley being in a frying pan, Brian. I don't even know what to describe what Kalen DeBoer is in right now in Alabama. They had that woman who said that if she won Powerball, she was going to buy him out the first thing before she even gave any money to her family. Anybody thinking Wisconsin could do something there? That's the only game to me that looks even mildly intriguing with the rest of the schedule.
Well, Luke Fickell's not exactly on the most solid ground either. He is standing on a frozen Wisconsin lake, and it's like late April. So that's kind of like the hot seat bowl here. So I don't know. I don't know anything about either team. I assume Alabama will rebound on their home field, but who knows? The Feinbaum show might completely combust if Alabama loses that game.
Yeah, I think Fickell's got a big buyout, but we know schools aren't afraid to write big checks to get rid of coaches. But I certainly wouldn't want to be the guy strolling into Tuscaloosa, that Hornets nest this weekend. And yeah, it's Wisconsin hasn't lit the world on fire this year so far. So all those Alabama frat boys be shaking those pom poms hard, man, with their Bama bangs, and it's gonna be a tough environment. Those Wisconsin guys, I gotta think they're on a different planet.
The other big news from college football this week, the single transfer portal window and eliminating the spring window. Tom, I'm assuming that would make your life a hell of a lot easier. Are you in favor?
Yeah, Devin and I talked about that. We both had a little toast with our Dr. Peppers over that one. Yeah, Barry Odom's in favor of it too. At least that's what he said publicly. The problem for Purdue is this, that window goes from January 2nd for 10 days to the 11th, whatever the 10 days are. Purdue starts classes January 12th. Gosh darn it, there's still an academic part of college football that kind of fouls things up. Purdue's going to have to get 30, 40, 50 guys in a 10-day window that quick as classes start. I'm sure you can enroll a guy maybe a week late, but still, it's a lot of work to get done there in a short period of time, especially when you don't have a spring window that you can bolster yourself with two guys. And go back and look at who Purdue signed in the spring. After spring ball, they got a lot of good players. It turns out, it looks like a lot of good players,
including their starting quarterback.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
There are not going to be any more whoopsies where you leave for a little bit and you're like, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to go back to the other girl. You're eliminating that with a single transfer portal window, but I think it got too chaotic, Dub. With it was just a little too much to handle. I know it actually benefited Purdue to have the two windows last year, but I think under normal circumstances, this is probably going to be a good thing.
Yeah, the only thing is, to me, it feels weird that players playing in the national championship game are going to be potentially be forced. I don't know the date of the national championship game in 2026, but they could be forced to enter the portal before their season's over. The scenario I always wanted to see was bumping up the the season a little bit, a week or two, which I don't think that they would do, just to give them enough time to bump up the national championship game and then have a portal window that was not open during the season and would give you enough time to get guys in. I know last year, though, to Tom's point about it's going to be a mad dash those 10 days, but Purdue is having guys on campus that the weekend before classes started and got them enrolled and got everything pushed through this most recent portal period. So it's not impossible. I just don't know how much they'll be able to do that, how much they'll be able to, or how much they want to get in the portal. Obviously, there's a lot of unknowns with that, and then kind of how the rest of the season plays out. But I like the one-time transfer thing. It falls in a weird spot for me on the calendar.
Yeah, we'll see where the chips fall when it comes to that. It's always changing in college football. Just when we think we got to figure it out, something else new is going to happen. Purdue and USC, 3:30 on Saturday afternoon, and everybody on the screen right now will be involved in that in some way. goldenblack.com is your place to be for all the coverage before and after. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll talk to some of you again on Monday.
Thank you, Derek Schultz.
Thanks,
Tom, Dub, and Brian. And that is our show, Golden Black Radio Friday edition. Thanks so much for joining us. And thank you to our terrific presenting sponsor, Academy Sports and Outdoors, as well as Purdue Federal Credit Union, the official credit card for Purdue fans, East End Grill and Ripple & Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street in Lafayette. The Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn. Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, which has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. Purdue-USC post-game show will go on these same channels following tomorrow's game, so be sure to check back in then. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And, of course, you can leave a positive review and whatever podcast platform you're utilizing. And if you haven't already, you're going to want to subscribe to goldenblack.com. Not only the site, but our YouTube channel, and enable alerts, new highlights and videos updated regularly as well on that YouTube channel and all of the podcast pages as well. Enjoy the game tomorrow. Post game to follow, Purdue and SC, and we will talk to you again on Tuesday for Gold and Black Radio.